Welcome to Explore, Explain. This is a long-form video and podcast series sharing conversations with data visualization designers and developers from around the world. Each episode explores the detailed hidden thinking behind a single project or a series of related works to explain the what, the why, and the how of the design process. So let's jump in to today's episode with your host, Andy Kirk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Explore Explain. My name's Andy Kirk. It's been a few months since the last episode, so nice to see and hear some people out there ready for another episode. And in this episode today, I've got a very special guest, Dr. Anna Lombardi. Anna, it's lovely to finally meet you in person. Well, not in person, but certainly in a one-to-one conversation. Thank you as much for giving up your time today to talk about a huge project, which we'll get into shortly. But for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, would you mind just giving a short intro, who you are, where you are, what you do, please?
Of course. Hi, Andy, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today, first of all. My name is Anna Lombardi, and I work as a climate data visualizer in the Copernicus Climate Change Intelligence team, which I joined in 2023. I am an experimental physicist and science communicator by background. And before joining Copernicus, I worked for 5 years as a data and visual journalist for the Times and the Sunday Times in London. So a bit of an unlinear career path, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. So it sounds a bit like you're kind of going back to your roots and your original
Exactly.
path,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
a bit.
And we'll get into some of the interesting sort of aspect there about, sort of shifting lanes away from data journalism into the world that you are in now. But just to give people a sense of what we're going to discuss today, an enormous project, and we're only going to sort of skirt the surface of this project in terms of the amount of efforts that you've put into this. But this is the annual European State of the Climate visualization report, mega amount of content. You worked on behalf of Copernicus with the World Meteorological Organization, is that correct? The
That's correct.
WMO. And it was published, as far as I recall, sort of April time of this year.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this and thinking, wow, this is obviously the issues that are raised are concerning and not to be, wow, this is amazing stuff. And I think just for the benefit of sort of setting the tone of this conversation, we're going to be celebrating data viz and not celebrating some of the things that the data viz is revealing, because obviously that is not good stuff.
Yeah.
But this is something that is clearly a huge, important, vastly vastly received piece of work, by which I mean there's lots of people who need and want and have access to this information. And I guess my first question is just a bit of history of this report. I believe it's been going annually since 2017, give or take a year.
Yeah.
So it's not a new thing, but I guess it's probably new to you relatively in terms of the job that you now work in. So can you just give, again, for the viewers and the listeners, a little bit of history of this report and kind of why it even kind of exists?
Yeah, of course. So the European State of the Climate Report, as you said, is an annual report that offers a detailed overview of the climate conditions in Europe and the Arctic region during the previous year. And it has been published by the Copernicus Climate Change team since 2017, usually in early spring, because we need to wait, of course, that the full data set for the year is available at the end of December, beginning of January. Then all the analysis and drafting the report itself and the review process takes place. So a few months, 3-4 months usually. And we try usually to publish early April every year. And since 2023, this has been produced in collaboration with the United Nations agency, the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. And of course, since 2017, the size and scope of this project has increased quite a lot. Also because 10 years roughly now, in terms of satellite data, is quite a huge, massive amount of time.
Yeah, sure.
So the data set that is become available and, the type of analysis has, of course, improved over time. And nowadays we can we have a wealth of data available that we can actually work on. And this specific report this year, it was based on approximately 40 different comprehensive data sets, and it's the result of the collaboration of 100 scientists and experts across Europe and
Wow.
across the world. So nowadays, I would say in the European setting, there is nothing else like this report to actually look at the state of the
Mm.
climate for our continent over
So
time.
there's nothing else, in a reporting capacity that has the same scale, the same ambition, the same
Yeah, there are.
complexity of contributors.
Yes, so there are, so in 2021 and 2022, I believe, the WMO itself used to publish a regional report for Europe. And then it seemed a bit of a doubling effort because most of the collaborators and contributors were actually working on both reports. So that's why we joined forces and now we are actually doing this one co-created report. Then, of course, there is a lot of climate reporting out there. There is the IPCC. There are other organizations worldwide.
Mm.
You have climate indicator dashboards, academic papers, climate journalism, which really has become, I would say, quite important nowadays. And the focus in the newsroom, I think, in most newsrooms, has increased over time. And then you have the national Met services, which are also doing some reporting on usually on a national scale. But of course, all these come again as a wealth of data coming from different actors. And yeah, they're all saying basically the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
unfortunately.
I guess that's a thing that's kind of common to all these, they're all giving the same message, but you still
Yeah,
have this evidence and this, um, the kind of integrity of this work to say, yes, these are real effects, these are real findings that we have.
yeah.
Now, you mentioned there about, journalism and obviously your own background in working at the Times. And I think it's so refreshing to see people like yourselves sort of doing the sort of almost like bringing the data journalism skills to different industries, different causes, different campaigns, whatever kind of shape and size it
Yeah,
is. I know that from the FT, we recently saw Chelsea Bruce Lockhart
that's it. Yeah.
to work at Ember and Energy. So a similar kind of direction of travel to yourself. I mean, I know this could be a podcast in itself, but how would you sort of reflect on, I don't know, the different nature of the job that you're now working? I guess it's now a single topic and perhaps not just this piece of work, but maybe sort of smaller but larger pieces of work. Sorry, singular but large pieces of work compared to the intensity and the rhythm of data journalism. But what's your sort of your headline thoughts now that maybe you're also into this job?
Yeah, I think data journalism really comes with a lot of skills that you can, develop over time in the
Yeah,
field. And most of them, I think I'm still treasuring and using on a daily
mm,
basis. Like the idea of course, interviewing the data and, looking for answers in
yeah, yeah,
numbers, but also find the best way to communicate your finding, the key message, knowing the audience you're talking to, and also the level of, clarity, transparency that you need to put into your data visualization in both a
yeah,
media outlet and also here. And again, the balancing details versus the bigger picture, it's all things that I've learned on the job.
yeah,
Because of course, as I said, I'm a scientist myself by training. So I had at the beginning a bit that bias of like every single detail is important.
yeah,
Instead, try to look for the key message and then add on top extra layer of information if needed. Um, so I think it's all these skills that I've learned when I was at the Times, and I still use them
yeah.
quite a lot on a daily basis here. So it's a bit of merging a bit skills and paths.
Yeah, no, and I wonder. I mean, and this is not to be unfair to anybody who's done these reports in the past and their roles, but I wonder if, and it's not just to this sort of report, but any kind of NGO type reports that we'll see, maybe in the past, the duty of creating the reports has either landed with the statisticians and the analysts who perhaps lack some of that flair of communication and the styling of the work that we see, or it's on the other hand, it's perhaps more the graphic design teams who perhaps, and again, this is not to be unfair, this is a very blunt observation, but maybe they don't quite have that journalistic rigor and that storytelling sense, but also with the data integrity. So it feels to me that again, you've got the perfect array of skills to do this as well as you've clearly done.
Yeah, when I've read first the job vacancy, I just thought, oh my God, this I didn't even know such a job could exist for me.
Right.
Because it just felt, to tick all the boxes. And again, merging the media, communication, scientific background. Yeah, it feels really, really nice,
I
actually.
say it's perfect fit. So the project itself, and we won't be able to get through everything because there's so much there, and it's all again from the visualization point of view, it's all wonderfully well executed and conceived. Um, could you again, for the benefit certainly of the listeners, just give us sort of an overview of what is it we see when we see this project? And I know it exists in different places. There's essentially a static printable form, although we shouldn't be printing these things, clearly. There's a digital version for more interactive browsing, but it's mainly for interactive navigation, perhaps, than interrogating it interactively. There is exec summaries, but what is it roughly that people will encounter when they see this piece of work?
Yes, so the idea of this project is that you have a lot of content that you can explore and navigate, and you don't need to be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
So the idea is really that you can go step by step, and it's been really thought through from the very beginning. So the idea when the first entry point, let's say, is the website of the project, and there you can. At the very top, you have a couple of buttons, so you can select if you want to look at the executive summary, which is really the summary of the key messages across the report. You can have the full version as a PDF, which can be downloaded and browsed also wherever internet access is not a given. In
Yeah,
some countries, that's still an issue.
great point.
And then you have all the 19 sections of the report that you can explore one by one. Again, it's a lot, but we were hoping that people could actually find whatever interests them most
Yeah,
with one click,
yeah,
basically. So, of course, there is a huge audience to this report. You have the policymaker sector, you have the media, you have the general public as well. And you don't want to get too much information out there. So you are free basically to browse and search if you're
yeah.
interested in glaciers or if you're interested in flooding. And to go from one section to the other, we try to keep the navigation quite, pretty straightforward. We also created for the first time this year a graphics gallery where all the graphics that come with the report are available at once, at a glance, so you can actually see all the figure at once. They're all downloadable with downloadable data set attached to each of them, so it's a very easy, even for journalists, to find the right bit of information attached to every chart. Most of them are interactive as well. So again, that extra layer of information I was talking about earlier can come through. And yeah, this was really designed thinking about journalists in the first place,
Yeah.
but also for other scientists, because in the graphic gallery, we also included supplementary figures that didn't end up being featured in the main PDF report or online, but they are still key to get some extra context and to get more information about a specific topic.
So
So yeah.
there's a lot there, and one of the things that I guess in different ways we all think about this quite early on in terms of what do we hope to accomplish with our work. I mean, I guess that could be a long list of different things that you could articulate from your perspective as a success story. But, you know, to you, what does a successful outcome from a report like this look like? Because I guess it has to be more local in time, in a time sense, than we've solved the environmental issues, because
No,
that's
of course.
further down the track, hopefully. But in the immediate sense, what would you sort of, I don't know, list one or two things? What do you see as if this is achieved, we've done our job?
I think to enable people to take informed actions
Right.
in different fields. Like if we're talking about policymakers, like we want them to base their decision on science
Yeah.
and on what science tells us about the state of our climate. What can be done, it's maybe on them, but at least they start from some solid
Mm,
base, let's say.
mm.
The same for general public. Like you need to be aware of what's going on, and we are trying to give you the best information available at the moment. So really the state of the art data and analysis that is done in this field. And then it's just a tool that people have to then take decision with their life. Um, but yeah, just shine a light on this issue, I think is so important. And as we have so much data and so many experts, which really can add value to
Yeah.
the public debate, right? To get these across and out there, I think is what drives me basically.
Okay.
Then, of course, the report has been covered in the media. We had a lot of, a lot of coverage in over 100 countries.
Mm.
200 journalists came to our media briefing. Again, it's a resonance that they give then to the topic itself.
Yeah.
But the main idea, I think, is really to give the information and the tools to then take informed decision.
Yeah, but what you mentioned there about the sort of journalism audience of this, or the media audience, perhaps more broadly, is, and you might have a different view to this from your perspective inside the industry, but it seems to me from the outside that this is not really anymore about persuading people that this is a thing. It's more about establishing just how much of a thing it is, and where, and what can be done to whatever degree we can do things. So it seems you're absolutely right. Obviously, clearly, this is about helping people make decisions, but just the even like the product of the graphics gallery to me feels like it's shifting or tilting as much towards, here's some materials, here are some assets for you, spread the word,
Mhm.
pass it on,
Yeah.
but do so in a way that where we've got the authoritative material for you to do so with confidence that this is right,
Yeah.
this is accurate. And I wonder again, I'm sure this is something that you will go through in any project, whether it's working as you do now or in the past, in different jobs. But I guess you'll always at an early stage work out a sense of tactics, a communication tactics view of, am I trying to inform with a degree of authority and make things clear and
Yeah.
understandable? Or am I trying to shock and persuade and maybe to a degree inject a little bit of fear and concern and maybe make things more emotive? Now, what I notice about this work is it doesn't feel like it's trying to be shocking and overly emotional. It's authoritative and it has to be,
Mhm.
but it's cutting edge data visuals, it's cutting edge styling of visuals, it's clean, it's worthy of trust, it's understandable. But I guess what I'm getting at is it's not doing certain things, it's not trying to be overly emotional. Is that something that was a conscious choice from the outset? And you know, is that just a reflection of where this topic is in terms of the sort of zeitgeist right now?
Yes, it was partially, I think, intentional, maybe not completely. I was not completely aware, but deep down,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit. And I think it came, when I was at the Times, we covered the COVID pandemic for over 2 years.
Mm.
And the idea of like avoid the red color, for example, avoid this sense of we're all gonna die, the all
Yeah.
doom and gloom. I always try to stay a bit away from that because I think on the long run, it's tiring and people detach from
Yeah.
the topic itself. So I would rather have a report like this one to have that authoritative voice, try to engage people, to get them on board, to, spark curiosity and grab their attention. So something that is eye-pleasing for a cover instead
Yeah.
of, a melting word with a thermometer broken or,
Yeah.
bears that are dying. Because this is, of course, it's one narrative, but I think it hasn't worked quite
Yeah.
well in the past. And I have
Does it
this
feel
feeling of
cynical, do you think, if you use those sort of tactics in a way?
it's, I don't know, in a way, I feel like really people detach
Right.
from
Yeah.
because we are so overwhelmed by things going on in the world. Many people just, scroll the news and you have these panic moments when you really think we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to, prevent them from taking action
Yeah.
then. Because if you see all doom and gloom, you are somehow stopped.
Yeah. What's the
You
point?
stop doing anything
Yeah.
because, like, okay, nothing that we can do. And instead, I want them to see what's going on and then see also the light, if you want, of the power we have to actually change things.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not our place in this report to tell people what to do, but like if they are on board and if you can grab their attention and they can actually see the science,
Yeah.
maybe with this authoritative voice, you can actually, have a better outcome in the end, on the long
Yeah.
term, at least.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think you're absolutely right. In any forum of communication that has a degree of campaigning or urging some sense of a cause, you can. And I've not really been involved in that stuff, so I'm speaking from an outside view. But you can drift into the emotional imagery and perhaps the cliches of a certain topic, which have a place, but maybe again, as you've said, they kind of run their course much quicker than something that is
Yeah.
just clear, authoritative, trustworthy, but appealing and aesthetically, heightened, like the work that you've done here. Now, in terms of you talked before about the sort of setup for the kind of April release. You got to wait for the data to finish and then come in. So 3 months, give or take, is a challenging timescale for the amount of work that goes on this. But
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just thinking, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's things that you can do in advance of the 31st of December last recording to get things into place. But when you start a project like this, I mean, what's the first thing you do? I guess you take a deep breath, you exhale, and you think, right, where to
Right.
start with this? I mean, how would you even start? Is it looking at previous works, sorry, previous reports, and thinking, there's the good bits, there's the things that we might want to do differently? What are some of the first tasks that you do to get yourself kind of working on this?
Yeah, so the project management activity for this project probably starts in the summer
Right.
before, um, when we again get all the feedback from the previous report, what has worked, what didn't work, and we try to organize a timeline that allows us to publish early spring, let's say. Um, so my specifically on data visualization. My work again starts about that time. And usually I start with the cover art because what I did for the past two reports, so the first two I worked on, was instead of having a satellite imagery for the cover, as it used to be in the early editions, I really wanted to give a platform to the data itself that is coming through this report. So giving really a platform to shine on
Mm,
their own. Um, and I thought, okay, this is a report about Europe. Temperature is probably the easiest
yeah.
variable that
Yeah.
everyone is looking at. Let's start from that. So Europe values for temperature change over time in Europe. And this is actually a trend that one single data point won't change massively. So I can actually take the data up to the year before, start playing around, and then add an extra point whenever the data is available in December. So I can use the initial data for the year, but like the full final number will come later on. So usually I start with these quite simple data set really, and try to play a bit around with that, having a white Canva really, which is quite nice. And then from there, usually around November, December, I of course share that with the broader editorial team. There is a bit of feedback, and that then becomes kind of the initial
The
identity.
signature style or something.
Yes, of the report. So from there, then we create the design for the PDF report, for this executive summary. So we take the color, we take some of the features of that goes also into the infographic, because I really like to create this uniform visual identity. And the same goes for all the different graphics. Again, so once the cover is done, my work goes to the actual data of the year for the report. And so I have interaction with all these contributors who send me data or send me a preview of charts that they've done. And in the very initial reports, everyone was sending charts that ended up in the report as they were. So imagine 100 people, all with a different, standard styles.
Tools,
And it was not a unique piece of work in my
fragmented in style, I guess.
Yes. So you could see a chart, and that chart could have come from anywhere, from any scientific paper, any researcher. And instead, I wanted really to create a visual identity for the report. So if you see one chart, it's coming from that specific piece of work report, which is, I think, really important as well today, as so much content is shared on social media every day, often without credits, often without
Sources,
the original, source. It's so important to also have a visual clue of, is this authoritative? Is this coming from a source I can trust? And if you see a chart from the Financial Times or The Economist, you know straight away that they are from there. You don't need to, do the work of investigating. So I wanted exactly the same for this scientific report. And this is why we set up a style guideline document at the very beginning, saying, okay, this is the font we use, this is the colors, the palette, well defined for each variable. So even contributors that send me their chart, they start from the same base. Right. Then I can tweak things. I can play a bit around and embellish them still, but at least we start from a base which is from a common ground, basically. And this helped massively. So, saved me hours and hours and hours.
I can imagine,
of work.
And do you feel that kind of organizationally that there is, I don't know, sort of a buy-in to data viz? You're not trying to convince people about the need to make, their analysis into these charts. Is there almost a internal respect of you, not so much of you as an individual, but you as in the role of data viz to bring all this to life?
Yeah, I think it has changed a lot, and it has increased massively recently. They have really seen the added value and the benefit of data visualization as a discipline, as a science in itself, if you want. It's not just the icing on the cake. It's really a thinking process that goes into each bit of visual you put out there. And I think the best thing for me was the feedback I got from the scientists themselves, because they sent me a chart. I tried to improve it, and they could see the added value of that. It was not. I was a bit afraid when I first started the job, knowing scientists, that would have been a bit, conservative in their ways, and like very attached to their piece of work, because of course so much work goes into one single data point.
Yeah.
and they are so attached to that. And I can really relate, I can understand that. But my job, I think, is really to elevate that, to really make it shine. It's like I feel this responsibility in a way, like I am given a rough, very precious diamond and I need to make it shine. And I am the last bit of a chain, if you want, because all the work has taken months and years and, to get this data in the end to me. And I have these precious things in my hand that I need to, again, as I said, to elevate, to make shine.
It's a lovely way to think about it. Yeah. I mean, I also understand from my experiences working with academics and scientists, especially that there is some in some respects a little bit of hesitation about the sense that data viz will add a certain style or a certain gloss or a certain, in some ways, beauty to their data,
Yeah.
and the sense that will it maintain the same faithfulness about the data accuracy and margins of errors, which are always a thing that we have to think about
Yeah, of
handling,
course, of course.
and the
Yeah,
detail that's included and sometimes the detail that's removed.
yeah.
But it sounds like you and the kind of discipline internally has earned that trust and has now got a very healthy kind of internal relationship, I guess.
Yes, and of course, every time I change or tweak it, I mean, the final word is always with the
Of
scientist.
course.
So they have to be happy and they need to double check that everything is in place as they wanted. The very good thing, and I'm really trying to sell this also internally, it's not just for the communication side of things. It's not just for the media, the social media posts, the glamorous kind
Mm.
of covers.
Yeah.
It's really also for the scientist, data visualization can be a tool, a very powerful tool. Sometimes even by changing a color palette, you can see a trend that you couldn't see with some other rainbow palette in place. And I had scientists coming to me saying, oh, I didn't notice these actually in my original chart. Yes, because it was so crowded, so much information that you miss some features. And if you clean it up, which doesn't mean you simplify it.
Mm.
You are not trying to, delete information or to oversimplify things. You're really trying to translate and guide through that visualization. So not overwhelming people, but just bringing them, taking their hand and just saying, okay, I've done the heavy lifting for you. I've taken the key message. And then if you want to explore more, there is more. But the key message is there.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, lowering the entry barrier for me is so important in every single chart that I work on. Like at a glance, it has to be understood by a scientist or
Mhm.
by my grandma
Mhm.
exactly the same way. The key story is there. I'm telling you a story with this data. It's not just, a chunk of information that I throw at you and then you are asked to make sense of it. And then once I've got everyone in and on board, then we can play with multiple
Yeah.
level of information and, you can explore more things.
Yeah.
Interactivity is a great tool for this. Um,
No, that's a lovely way of describing it, I think. Um, and I'm just wondering in terms of, you talked there about the kind of carving up of your ideas for the kind of cover art and the title page. And I'm glad you've said that because I sometimes spend far too long on the, maybe it's a slide deck and spending too much on my title page, but I feel like I need to establish a look and feel that everything else sort of falls off. So I'm glad that you've mentioned that you do that as well.
yeah.
But do you look outside at other data viz works for any guidance, inspiration, maybe things that you've seen that you want to emulate, but also things that you might want to not do? Not because something else is bad, but it's also sometimes about carving out a different difference from other works. So where do you sort of get your, I guess, visual inspiration from for works like this?
Yeah. So maybe I'm still a bit biased towards the media industry, but I follow many, many journalists and media outlets because there's really some amazing pieces of work.
And it's
Uh,
public, so yeah.
Exactly, and that are really worth reading and exploring. Journalists like Jana at the or Steve Bernard at the FT, journalists at the BBC, the Washington Post have a dedicated unit on climate reporting. So I feel they come with very nice and different
Yeah.
ideas sometimes to how to show the same data set that everyone else has. But they have this artistic, if you want, side of things that I really like. And then for going back to the cover art, I'm quite passionate myself about modern art and photography. So I take some inspiration during the year. I have this document and I just chunk images or picture I take at exhibitions or things, just patterns or trend that I like, color schemes. It
Scrapbook of
comes with it.
ideas. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then, yeah, just, browsing through, I start creating, let's
Mm.
say, yeah, with this white
No,
canvas.
I mean, and that's where there is scope and room for such artistry, such
Yeah,
tasteful subjectivity, because there are lots of places elsewhere that follows from this where it is a bit more right and wrong and do and don't do that. So
yeah.
I always feel it's important for people to know where's the right time and space and place to inject a bit of creativity, inject a bit of inspiration from elsewhere, because there's plenty of places where we can't. So
Definitely, yeah,
this is the
definitely,
right
yeah,
time.
and
Yeah,
play a bit more with this abstract concept, and
absolutely.
going by subtraction,
Yes.
starting maybe with a chart, but then remove the axis. Just
Yeah,
try to play around with the shapes and colors that you have.
that's right.
Um, it's quite, yeah.
And in terms of the content, I think you mentioned before the sort of 19 sections. Is that already relatively predefined as a sort of architecture or as a structure, or is that something that emerges? I know this will be probably a very chicken and egg answer in a respect in some respects, but I'm just wondering how the content and the analysis that shapes that content grows and sort of starts to find its shape. And is it just a dialogue between the scientists and yourself? And obviously, you've got a scientific background, so you've got that credibility. But these are world experts in their thing, so there has to be a relationship there. But what's the sort of journey from the blank page that you begin with to how you end up with the defined content that we see in or at least the topics, not so much the visuals just yet, but the topics.
Yes, so the topics themselves and the different sections are really defined by the editorial team. Um, and by the larger contributors
Yeah.
that come on board for this report. It depends a bit on, again, the data available, but also the collaboration that we have with different institutions and different research centers. Um, Sometimes there are trends and patterns that are really deserving their own section that year. There are, of course, a few that are quite regular, so temperature, precipitation, soil moisture. But then you have other chapters like lake temperature, for example, lakes
Mm.
temperature, which was a new entry this year. And every year we have a couple of spotlight sections at the very beginning of the report, which are really, topics that have come out so much during the year and have been discussed so much that we are trying to add that scientific background and context to what is going on, basically,
Mm.
in these
Yes,
specific
of
fields.
course.
So I personally don't have a say in the the topic that are chosen. I'm
Yeah.
just I'm going to all the editorial meetings, and so that I am across and I know a bit what is coming
Mm.
next. Um, but then I just I draw the icon for each and
The
every
icons are lovely.
section.
I love the icons. So clean and so I don't know. There's a personality there as well. I love it.
Thank you. Yes, so it's really yeah, the scientific community basically coming together and seeing what's available,
Yeah,
what's interesting this year, what can we say. Uh,
and I do think so. The 19 as a number, I do feel that if it was much more design person led, there would be an argument about making it 20 or 18 to give you a 5 by 4 or a 3 by 6 layout. The
Yeah,
prime
yeah.
number nature of 19 just gets to me inside thinking, work with 19 things. But that shows that even even at that level that there is integrity. No, these are the 19. We will not
This
budge
is the
from that.
interesting
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, that's nice. And obviously we could spend hours getting into the nuts and bolts of the data, the analysis of the material behind the visuals that we see. I mean, let me just give you a chance to. Were there any headline experiences that you went through, sort of pre-making the visuals, that you want to sort of share in terms of the struggles that I went through, or the you wouldn't believe how much work went into that particular data analysis, or I don't know, anything that you want, because the essence of this show in a way is to say, I want to tell you the things that you wouldn't believe we went through because you don't see it in the final work. It's the invisible workload.
Yeah.
Any headline experiences that you want to sort of share?
So I think just because we just mentioned these editorial meetings with the contributors, and I've joined most editorial meetings for different sections, and the amount of discussion and thinking that go into the final analysis is unbelievable. I mean, these meetings could run for hours and hours on
Wow.
like the best way to plot this data, the best way to do this analysis. Is the model correct? What baseline shall we use? It's this level of thinking that really gets to me, and just I'm always amazed of like
Mhm.
the quality of the science that goes with
Yeah,
it. It's not just we have a data set, okay, let's publish it.
yeah,
It's like the questioning and interviewing again the
yeah.
data goes, and the scientific debate that goes into every single bit of analysis that comes out. Um, so that's clearly a massive piece of work
And I
that
think on
that's
that front,
really
Anna, I think what's interesting there as well, and you'll already have this respect for the data from your time at the Times. But I think the more years I spend in this field, although I still love the design layer and the how we show this stuff, I think the greater appreciation I have for what goes into the data that feeds these things. The data is the star,
yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm sure
definitely.
that that's only heightened by what you're expressing there, that yeah, that figure, that number 95, you wouldn't believe the amount of care and
Yeah,
attention and models and
yeah,
expense to collect that information.
yes.
And so it's
Yeah,
probably quite humbling, I guess.
to give you just another example, the map, the river flooding map that went into one of the infographics. You had three statistics there. So saying the percentage of the river network that experienced severe or very high flood threshold. These two numbers, they're just two percentage
Hmm.
numbers, but they come from a model that runs for 2 to 3 weeks. And, it divides Europe into pixels, 1.5 kilometers each. So in the end, you get 5 million pixels, and you basically you calculate the different values over a 32-year period of time, because then you need to say to compare the current values to that average over time
Wow.
in the past. And that is like one file is probably 50 or 60 megabytes, one single file. And from that file, you get your 12% or 30%, which is one number, but
Yeah.
like the amount of work that and time that goes into that. And of course, the time to develop the model that we
Yeah.
run for 2 or 3 weeks, probably a couple of years.
And just the smartness of that being the way to do it.
And the number of people that worked on
Mm.
that model. It's not just, me getting the latest data for a survey
Yeah.
that's, over 30 people. It's like really a massive piece of thinking and
Yeah.
scientific.
And
Yeah.
that's why, as you say, as you say there, that sometimes a number can betray just how much of a story there is behind that
Yeah.
number, and we can take it quite casually. But no, that's, I mean, again, that's sort of testament to the integrity and the robustness of the material that you're able
Yeah.
to work with. And I guess, moving from that to the visuals, you've already spoken about the front cover. And I love the front cover. This kind of hero image, this sort of cover art that is perhaps, I guess, across all the contents that you've contributed to this report is the most that leans perhaps more artistic
Yeah, definitely.
based on data, but it is artistic. It's
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
grid lines and tick marks, and it's not like a default Excel kind of area chart. But um, I'm just wondering, was that ever a different looking chart type artwork? Did you go through different iterations for that one?
Um,
Always a bit of like a rivery sort of contours, mountain range going into the distance sort of look and feel.
yeah, so the year before I started from a heat map, and it ended up being the color for the petals of flowers in the end. This year I took the same data set and played a bit around again with lines, line charts, then area chart, but then I ended up with an area chart by decade because originally I tried to go, every 5 years. It just didn't quite work. So I'm also looking for a bit of a photographic composition, if you want.
Yeah,
Like it
yeah,
has to be, it could not work. And instead, once I plotted it like that, it was like just the proportions and shapes were just right for
yeah,
for some reason.
yeah.
So I started playing a bit around with the colors, adding some extra bits to
Mm.
it. And then the first feedback that I got from the team for from some people, they all quite like it in the end. But for a few people, it was too abstract in
Right.
originally. So I had to add these
Occasional data
markers,
points. Yeah,
yeah, which are yeah linked again to it's another level of information. So the maximum temperature, the year of the maximum temperature reached over that decade, a bit like the altitude markers that you have
yeah.
in mountainscape. And the inspiration probably for this idea of starting from the area chart came from Simon Scherer at the who works for Meteo Swiss, and he did a very similar. He created a very similar concept for Switzerland specifically,
Okay.
and recreated the mountains of Switzerland using temperature data. So it came a bit from that idea to actually recreate it for Europe and see if it works,
Yeah.
basically.
No, it's a great motif, and as you said, you sort of repeat some of the shapes as kind of almost like ornamental features, sort of through the report to sort of
Yeah,
bind it all
exactly.
together.
Yeah,
Um,
it's yeah, it was quite nice actually. It's simple enough that you can actually take some bits and
yeah.
reuse it somewhere else.
Yes.
And also another important thing and constraint this year is that the cover image had to work both in landscape and portrait mode because we have a PDF report, which is of course
Of course. Yeah.
portrait mode, and then you have the top of the site and you have the executive summary, which are landscape mode. So again, I needed something that worked both ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, another thing I really like, if I can,
Of
to
course.
include is to have some natural elements. So some abstract design, but still some natural element to it. I think it makes that link
Yeah, it
to,
grounds the topic.
yeah, we are still talking about the environment, climate, our planet. And so it gives a platform to the data, but it also convey a bit of that message. Okay, we are talking about our planet.
Of course. Yeah.
In,
And as you browse through the 19 topics, and I guess as you've sort of already alluded to, it's not necessarily intended as a page turner, from the front cover to the end. It's more of a thematic dive into the topics that you're interested in, and then move to something that you've never seen before. Dive into a topic you've not necessarily been interested in. But across all the different topics, there's a lovely, as you said before, kind of harmonious, unified styling of the charts. And there's there's a nice variety, but not a wild variety in terms of let's just do every chart type for the sake of every chart type. I mean, again, this could be a thing that we go through for hours and hours, but what was your sort of mindset in terms of chart variety? And I guess there's a couple of points here, which is obviously you'll know yourself as a professional, what's the right chart or bunch of charts to show certain analyses. But you don't want it to be 1,000 bar charts. You want some inevitable variety just for the texture of variety. I guess you're also weighing up the fact that you want to preserve a degree of accessibility in terms of recognizable chart methods that people don't have to go on a real journey for learning how to read it. But what's the sort of tightrope that you walk in terms of the kind of range of chart options that you ended up picking?
Yeah, of course. As you say, the first thing is, of course, try to get the right chart for the job, because not all chart types, of course, work for different type of data sets. But very often you have multiple choices. And my idea was like, we have I try to think the report as a whole, of course, but again, try to get some diversity into it, not to make it too boring and
Yeah.
have all line charts for everything. So trying, and also another, I think important idea is try to make a chart unique and differentiate it a bit from the rest.
Right.
So if I'm seeing a certain type of chart, maybe I know that I'm looking at temperature, and if I see a different type of chart,
I
I'm
see.
on a different variable.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you see a lot of lines and you associate them all to kind of
Yeah.
the same thing. And instead I want them to make them unique, identifiable, and also to keep everything a bit visually more interesting if you
And I guess
want.
that's where color variation also comes in
Definitely.
alongside
Yeah,
the chart type, right?
definitely, yes. Definitely. We have so much data on different variables that really we have so much choice that we can play with. Um, yeah, colors is another important thing because you can easily associate a specific, well, we try to define at least 10 or 15 different palettes that are clearly associated to a variable. So, for example, to differentiate precipitation from soil moisture, I mean, don't always use blue and red to see,
Right.
higher or lower,
Yeah.
but just blue and brown, or gray or green and brown, for example, for soil moisture, something that in our head is associated to that
Yes.
variable specifically. It makes it so much more recognizable and memorable as well, I think. If you see a chart about precipitation and it's blue and brown, you would associate that trend to that specific variable. So I think it's important to actually have it all uniform in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, I guess what unifies these things, back to the sort of unification rather than variation, is that across the document, you have got a relatively consistent array of different types of analyses. You are looking at where,
Yeah,
so maps.
maps. Yeah.
You're looking at how where has changed over time,
Hmm.
which is largely sort of small multiples. You've then got differences against maybe a target or an average or a typical or an
Yeah,
expected.
yeah.
So you've got sort of diverging bar charts. You've got I don't think there's a common name for these, but like difference charts. So
Hmm.
like an average line, and you've got like an area above and an area below.
Yeah.
So there are a certain amount of repeated analysis types, but as you've
Hmm.
said, the specific chart type to execute those and the way that you use color to bind the topic is what gives it its sort of signature uniqueness. And
Yeah.
that again, that must be a really hard balance to find. So I guess I'm guessing now, but within your 3 months of work, there's probably quite a lot of finessing. You might have it 95% there,
Yeah.
and it's that last 5% that really kind of changes it from good to great.
Yeah, and I think having the gallery this year. So last year I created an Excel document, which in the end, the size of which I won't tell you, but I basically copied every single preview of every chart by topic. So I could actually, in different tabs, so I could actually go through and see, do I have too many bar charts? Do I have, like, to see visually, do I have a balance of different type of visuals
Oh
that
yeah,
keeps it interesting?
yeah.
This year with the gallery was easier because it was all
Plus it's there.
it was all there at once. But again, yes, it's thinking of the report as one piece of work that has to be consistent, homogeneous, but also interesting enough to go through, basically, not
Yeah.
having the same
And
thing.
I mean, alongside the sort of almost like standalone charts, there are a couple that are, I would imagine a bit more sort of centerpiece charts in nature or centerpiece pieces of analyses. You've already spoken about the sort of widespread flooding piece with the two standout statistics that you mentioned, and I love the style of that display. I love the color scheme, so it's kind of orange and sort of purpley magenta kind of color that stands out against this sort of nice sort of deep blue background, and the resolution of detail in that map is beautiful. So I mean, just on that, and people will always ask this question, so I may as well ask you the question: how was that built? What tools did you use to kind of create that? Maybe the map itself. I guess there's a finessing at the end with maybe some sort of illustrator bringing it all into one place. But how was the map itself produced?
So the map itself actually came from the simulation itself
Oh, okay,
as a PDF file that then I tweaked in Illustrator.
right.
Um, and I tweaked, well, we decided about the colors with the scientists because it would have been a massive job to change every single pixel on my end. So I said, can you just use these X codes, please?
All from the
Which
start,
are
got you.
on
Yeah,
their side. So
yeah,
we used the two main color of the report itself that this year were this purple and orange kind of thing that you can find in the logo as well, and that are used then a bit across the
mm.
whole report. And these come actually from the space agency branding color palette.
Okay,
So we pick two every year from there. Last year it was blue and salmon, and then every year basically we pick a couple of different colors just
got
to
you.
make it a bit different from the year before. And then I use these also for this infographic. Have you recognized the river line?
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's all those little sort of subtle details that I love about this. I was like little Easter eggs along the way. I mean, what made you, I don't know, what made you sort of think to add that?
So I wanted something that divided the map from the key statistics underneath. And I played around with the rivers that experienced the worst flooding that were mentioned in the report. So I basically took the shape files for all of them, plotted in QGIS, and then played around what is working, what could be actually a nice divider here.
Yeah,
And actually, in the end, the River Thames won
yeah,
the competition. So I just played around a bit with orientation and things, and it just matched the overall design, if you want.
the perfect shape. Yeah. So as you said, sort of it nicely divides the map detail from the sort of standout, I guess, text boxes with the
Yeah, the
main
key
sort of
statistics.
line
Yeah.
figures. Yeah. Um, the other, I guess, sort of flagship visual that I love, and I believe you also love, is the melting glaciers uh,
Yeah.
piece of work, which, if we go back to kind of perhaps now redundant terminology, it would be perhaps more of a classic infographic in
Mhm.
some respects.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Um, but again, can you sort of talk through this? I mean, just to sort of describe it for viewers, you've got this sort of horizon at the top with the this sort of little visual motif of melting
Mhm.
happening,
Mhm.
but then below it we've got a series of sort of shapes of I think I'm correct in, is it the Alpine regions or a glacier in the Alpine region?
Yes.
And it's it's the shrinking that we're seeing, but and then there's like a little and I don't know what, again, if there's commonality in the terminology. It's almost like an eclipse chart or a moon chart, a little
Yeah,
visual nested
we could
circle within a
probably find a
circle.
name.
Yeah, we need to
Find
find
a
a name
name
for
for
this
it.
thing, or a Death Star chart. I don't know, but
Yeah.
so again, just sort of talk me through the process of ending up with that design, and why do you think it's one of your favorites?
Yeah, I think so. The idea, actually, funnily enough, of this infographic was sparked in 2023, so the year before,
Okay,
but it came too late in the production process. So we didn't have enough time to go back and forth with the,
right.
with the scientists to actually make sure that all the details were in place. So we parked it and we just took it back then for this year report. Um, and this is done in collaboration with the University of Zurich, who provided all the data, both the shapefiles for the alpine glacier extent in the 70s, and then the latest available observations, and also in terms of the actually percentages of shrink of these glaciers. So I got the shape files from there, mapped in QGIS, then refined in Illustrator. And again, there was a bit of back and forth internally within the team on colors, because
Mm.
my original version had a light blue and white
The
for the
glacier
two.
colours, yeah,
Yes, but the light blue was associated by some people to water, so they couldn't figure out if that was the amount of ice lost or the amount of
the
ice that
water
we have
gained,
now.
right?
Exactly,
I see.
exactly. So in the end, we reached this compromise, and then I wanted to, again, building an infographics is different from a chart or graphic that goes into a report. You have a bit more that freedom. So I played around with this concept of melting because I wanted the message to come across straight from the top. So we have the Alps, they're melting.
Yeah,
And I then used these droplets of water melting from the top. So these elements, I just reuse them to actually give a sense of the extent of ice
yeah,
that was lost over time. I played a bit around with the colors. Again, these orange shades that becomes more and more bright,
yeah,
the more ice was
yeah,
lost. Um, and then used again with sun and clouds that links back again to the cover. So again, bringing that uniform report
yeah,
idea also into all these infographics. And then we decided to add country flags to add yet another geographical reference.
yeah,
So also to get people to relate maybe a bit more to one or the other, if you are from Switzerland or if you've been to that
yeah, of
specific
course, yeah,
place. It's always nice to have that personal connection to it. And yes, as you said, I'm from northern Italy, so I spend many months in the summer holidays, usually walking and hiking in the Alps. So to see these glaciers just dying
yeah.
slowly under our eyes is,
Feels
yeah,
personal,
quite
right?
heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Um, I mean, again, we could go through hundreds of charts that I want to probe in
Mhm.
the little details. One of my favorite, I've already mentioned the difference chart, but there's a figure 3.2, which is this
Yes.
average daily surface air temperature for Europe. And again, it's this kind of average bell-shaped curve, and you've got peaks above of the all-time maximums, much warmer than averages. But just the little details from
Mm.
the brevity of the amount of chart apparatus in there. There's intervals of 5% grid lines across the horizontal, but there's no vertical, which makes it clean.
Yeah.
Um, the fact that you only mentioned 2024 and degrees Celsius once, and then that's established. If this was, no offense, scientists, if it was a scientist doing this, it'd be repeated degrees Celsius all the way down. And then just even like the little outline stroke or the kind of glow on the outside of the words and the letters so we can see them against the background colors.
Yeah.
These are all little beautiful details. So every chart has got those incredible kind of care and exquisite attention to detail. But I guess just to sort of give you a chance again, just to sort of share, you wouldn't believe what I went through, or are there any other kind of headline stories from your chart making process, or little details again that you want to bring to people's attention that we might miss or that we might not appreciate what you went through?
Yes, so maybe a couple of examples. The one you just mentioned, there was so much information that was crucial to
Mm,
show at once.
yeah,
And the original chart that I was given was way too overwhelming for anyone, I
Yeah.
think. So I've tried really to playing a bit with colors and shades and opacity to really make it clean and
Mm.
not too noisy
Mm.
visually. So really reduce the noise, get rid of all the things that are not needed,
Yeah.
and then add on top that extra layer of, so the all-time maximum, for example, that is again some dots on top of the chart. Originally it was another line chart broken, and
Right.
it was like, yes, but it's not coming through enough. I
Mm.
can't see the difference between one line and the other. And the other important thing of this one, I think, was yes, you have a 10th to 19th percentile, like a confidence interval. It's important and it has to be there, I agree.
Mm.
But is it the key message?
It's
That,
secondary.
exactly. Can you knock it back a bit?
Yeah.
And can you just focus on the key message that we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Because, of course, for scientists, the uncertainty and the error bars are really important, and they are.
Mm.
But in a report like this, I think the key message should really be the trend,
Yeah.
the overall trend.
Yeah.
Then, yes, there is uncertainty. Then there are error bars, yes.
Yeah.
But especially for policymaker, you don't want them to put too much attention on the or too much weight on the uncertainty level. The important bit is that so many data sets agree on the trend.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you have variability, you have uncertainty, but the trend is there. Focus on the trend. And then in terms of other charts, oh yes, I was sent an Excel spreadsheet with a file name that with a few letters and numbers, which meant absolutely nothing, and then 20 columns with a three-letter acronyms at the top that I had to figure out myself in a way what they meant. Again, by subtraction, like, okay,
Mm.
this could be that region and this could be that other region. And it took me probably a couple of hours to actually make sense of it all.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, they've worked with this data for so long that it's so obvious to them.
You
And
forget what others don't know.
yes, and
Yeah.
also very often they don't even think they may need to share that
Yeah.
spreadsheet with someone else. So if it's clear to me, I don't really, pay much attention of can someone else actually read and access this data. So it's a bit of a huge collaboration, and you need to keep talking a
Of
lot.
course. Yeah.
The
Talking and
time.
listening. I always think that listening's an underappreciated skill to let others have the space to sort of tell you about their thing. And I guess that notion of listening and communicating as well, going back to your point about that chart. And I often talk about this notion of sort of the volume of a chart. Some things need to be loud, some things need to be quieter, some things need to be heard, but very quiet. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of layering effect that you've created there. And again, little details I love about that, which I've just even noticed now, is that the data range could go up to a maximum of 25 down to -15, but you've capped it at 20 and -10 so that the extremes go beyond the natural boundaries and they sort of stand out as a result of that. They're exceptional and they're
Yeah.
made to look exceptional. So I love that little extra detail. So,
Yeah, I
you know,
quite like when the data actually goes slightly off the
absolutely right.
axis and
It
just
spills off the
even through
page.
the text.
Yeah, absolutely right. It kind of intrudes, but that makes a
Yeah.
point. It's
They
out of
take
its
their
space.
space.
Exactly right. No, I love that detail. So just to sort of wrap up, Anna, I mean, obviously, I suspect from what you said before that now that we're in the summer period, as we re record this, you're probably looking forward to the 2025 planning and preparation. But to do that, you also need to reflect on this year's. I mean, what are your kind of headline reflections on this body of work, on how it landed, on your own sense of how you felt it was enjoyable, efficient, nourishing? What's some of your kind of headline reflections on this project?
Yeah, so I think the main objective that we had to kind of overhaul the report's visual presentation and create a consistent visual identity and streamline navigation through the different parts. I think we kind of delivered that. And also the focus that we put on having every single chart, well, most charts interactive, but and most of them responsive on different devices, also paid out in the sense that more than half of our views came from mobile. So again, it's testament of the fact that it was also accessible
Yeah.
through different kind of devices. We got so we have we are still tracking, of course, all the analytics from the project, also, you know, to inform our next edition. But some preliminary analysis that went from April to June, roughly, showed around over 37,000 views and 5,000 PDF downloads just for the main report, and then an average of 2 to 4 minutes per page
Very good.
spent.
Yeah.
So it means really you are engaging people to
Yeah.
stay. So you are getting their attention
And keeping them.
and keeping them. You know, it's more than the 10 seconds of a scroll on social
Yeah.
media. They are really digging more into the content itself, which is really, really pleasing and rewarding because it's such an important piece of content.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the media coverage and the social media reach that also was really good. Only with the media mentions that we counted, we should have reached around 7 million potential viewers worldwide. So it's, again, a good reach for such, if you think about it, it's a regional report,
Yeah.
not even a global one.
Yeah.
But I think it was really, really well received so far. So of course we can improve, and we can, you know, again, go back to the analytics and try to figure out what we can do better. But from a first, yeah, at the first glance, I would
Yeah.
say very pleased with
I
the
mean, do
overall.
you have, and you may not have an example, but do you have a particular favorite piece of feedback that you received, or something that most made you feel, if that's happened for that person in that way, then things have gone pretty well?
Well, there was a comment that made me laugh a lot because it was like saying, "Oh, it's an amazing work," and not a single rainbow color palette in
Oh,
sight.
excellent.
And that really made me laugh a lot. But no, getting some very good feedback from the head of the graphics team at the Times was really rewarding because I've learned so much from them, and, you know, just working side to side
Of course, yeah.
and try to absorb all their knowledge. And also some very good feedback from people I really admire in the field, like, you know, Valentina De Filippo or Alberto Cairo, people that were my heroes when I started and still are really in this field. To get some positive feedback from them was like really rewarding, sort of a great validation test for me,
Yes.
because I'm not a designer. I'm not, I come to this field like, you know, tiptoeing a bit from the back door, and I'm trying, of course, like to learn from them as much as I can, and to get their good feedback on a piece of work that I worked on was really, really pleasing.
Well, it's very pleasing and very well earned. I mean, you might not think of yourself as a designer, but you have designed with beauty and excellence. So whether that's trained or just acquired, you've nailed it. And it's a incredible piece of work. Again, notwithstanding the sobering nature of the things that it's saying, which is the key thing ultimately of this work. But that's a wonderful insight into the kind of process that you've gone through, Anna. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences there, and all the best for the next coming year's project, which we'll look out
Thank
for
you.
in early spring. So thank you to Anna, thank you to viewers and listeners, and see you again soon. Another episode of Explore, Explain. Bye for now. To see more information about today's episode, including some links to key sites and resources mentioned,
please visit my website at visualizingdata.com. Here you'll also be able to find details about my book, information about my public and private training courses, as well as over a decade of blog posts. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking, subscribing and spreading the word. See you next time.